Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Gambling Podcast, Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is presented by WynnBET. Bet $100 at WynnBET and get a $100 free bet. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast/WYNNBET to claim your free bet today. I'm joined by Kyle today, one of my favorite guys on Twitter. Well, the first time I've gotten him on the show and the first time I've gotten a chance to meet him. Fantastic to have you on, man. How you doing today?
Good. Yeah, real good, man. Hard to believe we're 6 weeks into the season already. I feel like so much has changed,
I know. We were shown once again how little we know about this game that we love. Unfortunately, it's been a wild start to the season. A bunch of twists that I couldn't have predicted. But I feel like I got a lot of stuff right. A couple of my guys before the season, like Michael Thomas, Javonte Williams, I feel like I just didn't get a fair shake at, unfortunately, especially with just the horrible Denver offense. And Michael Thomas just hasn't been healthy, but he was great when he was on the field. Hopefully he gets back soon and everything. Jumping into it today, man, that was a rough game last night. I always like to talk about the Thursday night game on this Friday night show to start off the day. And there's not a lot to talk about. I'll say that it was another horrible Thursday night game. It's been like that for the last couple of weeks, I feel like. What was just some of your impressions? We can start off with Chicago if you want. It's ugly everywhere around, but do you have any first thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody's kind of piling on Justin Fields, but I feel like we haven't seen enough. I mean, I posted something on Twitter today. If you look at his passer rating last year on design rollouts, he actually had the highest passer rating in the NFL. Now, albeit a little bit smaller of a sample size, but I feel like they're not really utilizing his strengths well. They just kind of put him back there and not letting him use his athleticism. I feel like a lot of the things going on with him can be fixed with some better coaching. But yeah, I mean, and I'm someone who had a lot of Cole Kmet before the season. I was excited, and it's just the Bears offense. I mean, I was looking the other day. I was like the 1934 Bears, like coached by George Halas, was passing the ball more than the 2022 Bears. So that's made it hard for fantasy, man, because they don't throw enough.
Yeah, it's been rough. Especially, I was just arguing with somebody on Twitter about it. I just feel like I was just saying how incompetent I feel like the Bears front office is, and the guy was like, "Well, they haven't gotten a fair shake at it." But I told him it's just like, man, it's the same front office that gave him no weapons to task to, no offensive line, waiting for that $100 million in cap space next year. And then you give him, a defensive coach, a head coach, and it just feels like you can do some of those things, but you can't do all three of them is what I just feel like he hasn't been given a fair shake. And I just feel like potentially if Fields doesn't improve more as a passer, and whether it's fair or not, I just feel like if the Bears are bad and they end up with a top 5 pick or so, they could end up selecting a quarterback. Unfortunately, I think just because they might want to go get their guy. That's what some people say that's crazy, but unfortunately, I think that could happen. Of course, I think Fields gets another shake at it somewhere, but that would be disappointing. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of said something similar to the season, and I think Ryan Poles came in and he said, "Look, like my intention is to do the best thing for the Bears," and his thought was to tear this thing down to the studs, which. I'm somebody who's been a Browns fan for my whole life. I can tell you the last 20 years of tanking really didn't work. I really don't think tanking works. I'm not necessarily saying they're deliberately trying to tank, almost kind of like the Browns were when they went 0-16, like the Dolphins were before Tua. But they've basically stripped this thing down to the studs and said, hey, like this is what we have. And they want to build to the draft, which is fine, but it's just, I think the problem is if that was your plan and you're going to take another quarterback, like why didn't you just trade Fields in the offseason when you probably could have got a first-round pick for him? Now you're just torpedoing his value. You'll probably get a third-round pick at the most. And that's if the problem is you may have 7 quarterbacks that go in the first round next year. So it's like
exactly
nobody may even trade for Fields by default.
That's what I worry about, and like I said, that's what worries me is because there's like 7 first-round quarterbacks potentially next year. And, the Bears, like I said, a new staff could want to pick their guy. I was kind of hyping up David Montgomery after last week just because I felt like he was a sleeper and he's kind of disrespected. Like I was hyping up Josh Jacobs a couple weeks ago, and he has had a couple great games, and then I kind of felt David Montgomery was in a similar situation, but he did have a pretty poor game. And Khalil Herbert did bust off a big run. So do you feel like David Montgomery is still the guy going forward, or do you think that backfield's going to be changing up a little bit?
It looks like it's going to be kind of more of a split. It was kind of a bummer because Herbert had that long run. And I mean, you watch the two, it's like watching Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. And this is nothing against David Montgomery. It's nothing against Brian Robinson. I mean, they're both premier athletes in the NFL. The other running backs are just incredibly better, more athletic, can make more plays. I think Herbert's better than Montgomery. Antonio Gibson, as we know, is the best running back on the team, but that's just not how Washington views it. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like if I'm going to start, the only Bears running backs are the only Bears I really want on my fantasy team are both the running backs. I mean, that's it. You can't play anybody else at this point.
I thought Darnell Mooney's gotten a little something going. He's not like, he's not certainly not a starter in 2 wide receiver leagues or anything like that, but I think he's getting a little bit of flex value. So it's Justin Fields has gotten a little bit more, not it doesn't say a lot, but he's gotten a little bit better, a little bit more the output in the last couple of weeks, which like I said, it wasn't comparing it to a lot. So Darnell Mooney's getting a little traction, I thought. Disappointing on the Washington end most all around. Brian Robinson's day was saved by a touchdown. Antonio Gibson was kind of given work after Brian Robinson was ineffective through a lot of his first-round touches. So, we'll quickly, we can kind of pace past that. Wentz is, once again, he's regressed. Those first couple of weeks were a mirage, I think. Do you any quick impressions on the Washington offense, or is this just becoming a disaster?
Wentz is another guy. He's hard to start for fantasy because he's so inconsistent. I mean, I play, I kind of prefer Superflex. I play in a lot of Superflex leagues. So, I mean, most of the leagues I'm in, you're not really finding quarterbacks on the waiver wire. I mean, they have 3 really good pass catchers. I'm not really that excited about McLaurin. So I was actually looking up Wentz's stats. I'm not excited about McLaurin, but it's been a great year for Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson's looked impressive. I know he's out. He might be out another week or 2 with a hamstring, but yeah, I mean, Wentz has had 3 games. He's thrown over 300 yards. I mean, he's still, I want to say within, he's still finishing in the top 12 of quarterbacks. It's just, he's so inconsistent week to week that it's just, he's one of those guys, if you want to just take him in DFS and hope you can catch lightning in a bottle, or even maybe like a, weekly best ball or whatever. But yeah, a managed fantasy league, Carson Wentz is hard to start because he could kill you in what 1 week all by himself.
Yeah, luckily I'm not faced with that decision many times. My God, before we jump into the other stuff, because we better move on. But man, I've been betting. I've been starting in a Superflex league between Carson Wentz and Trevor Lawrence in my Superflex spot, and I've picked wrong every single week. And I picked one of them as a disaster every week, and I picked that guy every week to start. And this week I just started off. I was like, I'm going with Carson Wentz over Trevor Lawrence. Of course, I'm 1-4 in that dynasty league because of my horrible decisions there. So I'm regretting it. But before we jump into some of our other content here, I'm just going to talk a little more about WynnBET. Thinking of joining WynnBET? Now is the perfect time. New customers who bet $100 get a $100 free bet. Plus, the WynnBET Casino is always open 24 hours a day, where you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Looking to join WynnBET's biggest winners club? Whoever hits the biggest parlay on WynnBET odds-wise gets a $1,000 free bet. Last week, someone turned $6 into $4,000 plus. They got a free $1,000 bet. WynnBET truly hashtags DGens only. There's so much to choose from. All you need to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast/WYNNBET to claim your free bet today. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, Kyle. So, I like to start off these shows before we get into the underdog stuff by just talking about some of the big headlines of the week. Obviously one of the big ones this week is Rashad Penny going down with a season-ending injury. The Seattle ranks, they've been a huge surprise on offense this year. They rank 8th in yards per game, 7th in points per game, 12th in rushing. And Kenneth Walker is coming in to lead that backfield, and he's already 14 in yards per touch and 13 in a production premium over the average running back. So, he's starting off pretty hot. He busted off a big run.
Right.
How do you feel about Kenneth Walker going forward? How do you rank him?
I feel good. I don't know if I'm at the running back 1 yet. Probably got him about 15. I mean, he's got the upside. I think my concern is, they do like DJ Dallas. I mean, now granted, there's a bigger talent disparity between Walker and Dallas than there was between Penny and Walker, who were pretty close in talent. I'm excited about Walker. I mean, he's a guy that I had on, and there's actually even like a 0 RB team where I think I had Walker, like Singletary, and I think like Khalil Herbert. And it was like, man, that team's looking great with all these guys playing so much. Yeah, I mean, I like Walker. I'm optimistic. He's got the upside that you want, for the rest of the season. The Seattle offense has been great, so it's like I want as many pieces of that as I can get, which is not something people said before the season. Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic for sure. I think he's got a lot of talent. I almost feel like we're kind of seeing a little changing of the guard here. We got, Breece Hall's really come on. Dameon Pierce has been impressive. And I feel like it's maybe only a matter of time before we see some Rashad White too. But yeah, I mean, I loved this rookie running back class this year. So I'm excited for Walker.
I love it. Yeah. And you would have been in the minority there. So, good call there. Kenneth Walker, I have him about at that mid RB2 range too. A lot of that, of course, that production came off one run last week. But like I said, that the Seahawks offense has been extremely productive, and it hasn't been a detriment to everyone's fantasy value like we thought they have been. So, you're taking a running back and a great offense, which I think is always great value. We also saw the starting debut of Kenny Pickett. Despite that horrible score, I was watching a lot of that game. I think I saw a lot of potential. I thought Kenny Pickett just missed Deontay Johnson on a couple big throws that, Deontay Johnson just was out of bounds. It was right on the sideline. Great throw. His day would have looked a lot better if he would have connected on a couple of those. He had to throw about 52, 53 times, if I remember correctly. So, like I said, 66 completion percentage so far this year. Very accurate. How do you feel about him? What were your impressions so far?
Well, they've got a tough schedule coming up. I think that's what makes it. They just played Buffalo. I'm pulling it up now. I think that was my only thing was I was concerned with their schedule for the middle of the season here. I mean, this thing is like murder's row. They got Tampa this week. They have Miami the week after, which is favorable, but then they got to play Philly. I mean, that's tough. So I feel like I'm optimistic on Pickett. Like I like what I've seen. I mean, that first game that he played, I think it was against the Jets. They benched Trubisky at halftime, and Pickett actually had 3 interceptions, but 2 of them were dropped, and then the last one was on a Hail Mary. So he's got some weapons with Deontay, and I'm really liking the chemistry with Pickens. But yeah, after that, they played Tampa, the Dolphins, the Eagles. So the Dolphins is a good matchup. Then they got a bye week. Then they play the Saints, the Bengals, the Colts. So that's a little bit of a gauntlet there. I think you can play him. I think my issue with Pickett was I think he's an NFL quarterback. I know I was kind of in the minority on that one. I trust the Steelers. They're kind of, probably the most stable organization in the NFL. I think a lot of these rookie quarterbacks, whether they succeed or not, I'm not saying every time, but a lot of times it just comes down to the situation and coaching and getting the support that you need. I think my question with Pickett is, what is his upside? Like, I think he can play in the NFL, but, is he going to get to like a Joe Burrow? Is he going to get to Josh Allen? I don't know if I see that. I don't know if I see enough like elite kind of quarterback traits from him, but I think he's good enough. It's kind of my thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see a lot of upside too, but yeah, nothing like nothing extreme upside, nothing like top flight quarterback. I don't even
Mm.
know if he'll ever be a starter in a one quarterback league. That really wasn't his value coming in. We knew that he didn't have too high of expectations. I think his dynasty value, even, he was past the quarterback 20 in a lot of dynasty leagues even. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I just, I think he's shown product, but, I'm a little hesitant because, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks start off, hot, at one point, Baker Mayfield was a first round dynasty superflex startup pick. Daniel Jones was highly thought of at one point. Carson Wentz, these guys can start off hot, when there's not a
Right.
lot of film on them, when defenses haven't had time to adjust. These guys can start off, so, of course, he's going to have to continue to develop and everything, continue to get better. But I like what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
Just, moving on to another highly productive rookie running back, like you were talking about, Breece Hall. Man, that was a great breakout game.
Yeah.
It was just short of even a bigger day. Just coming up at the 1 yard line twice and getting Michael Carter touchdowns. That was unfortunate for us Breece
Yeah.
Hall fans, but breakout game. I just he's extremely athletic. Everything we saw at the combine is completely true. He has a 14.8% target share, and he's he's just been fantastic. He's at number 6 in yards created per touch. So he's been fantastic. And it just seemed like we've seen with Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor and other running backs. It just takes, some guys, rookie running backs, just take a
Right.
couple games where they're working with another guy. And then once they get that opportunity, they're breaking out. A lot of talk about Breece Hall being the dynasty RB1 this week. What were some of your thoughts on that performance?
Yeah. I mean, he actually was tackled at the 1 twice. So he honestly could
Yeah.
have had 3 touchdowns last week. Um,
Yeah.
I was a little annoyed because Michael Carter came in and got the vulture on both of them. They at like the 1 yard line, Hall was gassed after the long run. They brought in Michael Carter and he punched it in both times. So yeah, that was I have some Carter too because I think he's a good player. But yeah, I mean Hall, I loved him coming out. He's great out of the backfield, and he's someone who's relatively young. He just turned 21 before the season starts. So I mean, sometimes with these running backs, you almost kind of got to look at them like you almost got to look at them like a car. And some of these running backs, when they come to the NFL, are just got so much work and so many carries. Where Hall was very fresh, he hadn't had a lot of hits. So sometimes that we got to take that into consideration. So I actually think Carter being there is going to be a good thing because as long as Hall can still get 65% of the snaps and get spelled by Carter, that would honestly be perfect. I think we've seen with Christian McCaffrey, there were 2 years in a row, he had a 91% snap share. And then the next 2 years he was injured. And I think we're seeing it with Naji Harris this year. Everybody loves to bag on Naji Harris, but Najee's playing hurt. When they said that he had that Liz Frank injury, that was when I was like, I am not drafting this guy because I was concerned. And everybody's, ripping on him saying he sucks. But I mean, he can't cut with that injury. He honestly should be on IR. And possibly even for the season, but I don't know why they keep playing him. But yeah, with Hall, I'm excited because he does everything well, and the Jets' offense, man. I mean, all Zach Wilson has to do is play within the confines of the game. I think last year he tried to play too much hero ball, trying to force balls and doing all this stuff, and he had a couple of games where it was like he had no touchdowns and like 4 picks. But he has started to look better. I looked at his film last week, and I was definitely encouraged. So I mean, yeah, I think it's wheels up for Hall for sure because the Jets just have so many weapons that you can't focus your scheme on shutting down one guy when you play him. So I think the Jets are going to be fun for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Breece Hall, Michael Carter's less of a threat to Breece Hall than all those wide receivers are to each other. Breece Hall is going to get a lot of touches, whereas those wide receivers, it could be a different guy every single week. Just finishing up before we get into that underdog best ball man, Trevor Lawrence, one of my guys, I drafted him a lot in Dynasty Superflex leagues last year. I just was like, I just jumping on board. I was like, let me get this generational guy. I'm going to draft him in the first round. And he's regressed, and he just wasn't that guy. I don't think, he just wasn't that pro ready guy that a lot of people hyped him up to be. Were you were you ever a big Trevor Lawrence guy like me?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah. So the Dynasty League that I'm in with you, Superflex, I have Lawrence. So I got him in the 3rd round, so I was pretty.
Yeah, 3rd round. That's good value. I was taking him there too this past year.
Yeah, I mean, I think my concern maybe sometimes with Trevor is the consistency. He's not been consistent. I mean, he's got some weapons. I think the problem with Lawrence is we really need to be looking at this year like it's his true rookie season. I think we just need to forget about last year with Urban Meyer and everything that was going on. I mean, he had no weapons. His line stunk. So, I mean, this Jaguars team has a couple of pieces, but they're still a ways out from being, a true contender. So, it's going to take some time. I think maybe I'd like to see a little bit more fire from Lawrence. He just kind of seems like, and I'm not saying, maybe being even keeled as a quarterback is probably a good thing. Like we look at Justin Herbert and he's just kind of always kind of mellow, but I don't know. I feel like I'd like to see a little bit more fire from Lawrence sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I feel like he's got so many elite tools and traits and skills. For fantasy, he hasn't been running as much as we want him to be. I was actually working on this the other day. Let me pull it up for you because what I worked on was being a super flex guy, I decided I was like, hey, when it comes to fantasy, I'm going to start specializing in quarterbacks now. And that's, do my weekly quarterback rankings because that's just something that I know. Like in my preseason rankings, I had Allen 1, I had Lamar 2, I had Hurts 3. And, all 3 of those picks are looking great. But with Lawrence, so I went back and I did every quarterback's rushing floor since 2021. Basically what that means is every quarterback, how many fantasy points have they generated per game just from rushing? And since last year, Trevor Lawrence's rushing floor is only 2.37 points per game from rushing. To put it in perspective, Zach Wilson's at like 3.34. Justin Fields is at 4.6. Kyler's at 5.1. Josh Allen 6.6. Lamar 8.1. And Jalen Hurts is over 10. So I think with Lawrence, I want to say he had 1 year at Clemson where he rushed for I want to say it was like 500 or 600 yards. And when a quarterback rushes that much in college, we got to pay attention to it because you lose yards for sacks in college. So if like a quarterback rushes for that much in college, it translates better to the NFL. So yeah, I want to see more. I'm definitely hopeful. I actually had him, one of my predictions on the season was that he would finish in the top 12. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's tough. And yeah, I was right with you. I thought he was going to be like right around that 12 mark too. I thought he was going to take a step forward this year. I was a little bit nervous. I think I maybe had him about quarterback 15 or 16, but I thought we'd see a little bit more consistency out of him. I didn't know if we'd see those peak performances like he had a couple weeks ago, but I didn't know if we'd see these kind of floor weeks either. So it's a little bit disappointing. Through the last 2 weeks, he's 36 of 70, 460 yards. 2 touchdowns and 7 turnovers. Number 12 in total QBR though, and but he has had the number 3 protection rate, which is kind of concerning considering his struggles. So we'll jump into the underdog stuff though. Before we do, just going to pay our last set of bills before we finish up here. If you watch football, you need Fubo TV. Fubo TV gives you complete coverage of college and pro football with NFL Red Zone plus games in 4K at no extra charge. Over 100 channels of live sports and entertainment for a fraction of the price of cable. Watch on all your devices and never miss a game or an episode of your favorite shows with the included cloud-based DVR. Plus, there's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. Right now, you can try Fubo TV for 7 days and get 15% off your first month. Just go to FuboTV.com/SGP. That's FUBOTV.com/SGP. Odds Trader is a place to compare odds from all major sportsbooks. You can also compare the different sign-up codes or promotions from sportsbooks to get the best deal. The app also provides player statistics, key game stats, injury reports, and projected game day weather for bettors to make the most informed bets possible. Some of these key features include play-by-play updates, player statistics, projected game day weather, and the bet tracker allows you to keep records of all your games and betting activity. Go to oddstrader.com/bluewire. OddsTrader, the #1 site for all your game day bets. Okay. And, we like to feature Underdog on the show just because it's a big platform just blowing up in popularity. It's just getting more and more popular. And I was doing a ton of these best ball resurrection drafts. I already think they should do a week 8 best. I already think they need to do week 8 best ball re-resurrection. So Just at the close here, we just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Just some of my higher exposed players, maybe some of the guys that you were getting as well. Just to name, just to start off with, at least, I might have changed just a little bit. I wrote this down a couple days ago, and I did a couple drafts since then. But as of a couple days ago, my highest exposed player, at the wide receiver 5 range, which I couldn't believe the disrespect, was Jacoby Myers at 40%.
Yeah, nicely done.
Man. Yeah, just a steal for a couple of weeks there. It was just like, wide receiver 5. He's so good when he's on, he has a relatively low ceiling, but man, he's just rock solid every time he steps on there. How do you, where do you think Jacoby Myers is? You kind of like me, you feel he's been disrespected a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I do a weekly DFS column, so of players that are like considered bargains, and I even said in my column this week, I said, look, as long as Jacoby Myers is lower than 5,500 on DraftKings, I'm going to advise you to play him every week, because DraftKings is using a full PPR format, which I feel like that's where Myers is more valuable, because he catches a lot of balls. He's got an alpha target share. I'm pulling up my Underdog now. I don't think I have a lot of them in Underdog, because Underdog's half PPR, but he's a player that I really like for sure. I think he's kind of established himself as kind of the pure one on the Patriots. And he's a player, he's definitely due for some positive touchdown regression. I mean, it was like last year. I think last year he only had like 1 touchdown, and then maybe the year before he had none. So I think his first 2 years he didn't have a touchdown, if I remember. So I'm looking at my exposure now. My top exposure at the quarterback spot, Lawrence, Hurts, and Lamar. So that's working out well. Running back. Yeah, Gainwell hasn't done a whole lot. Rashad White, Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, Khalil Herbert. I had a lot of Javonte was hurt, and I have a lot of Darrell Henderson, so I'm hoping that maybe he's going to turn things around. And then receiver, I had a lot of Bateman, Traylon Burks, Devonta Smith, Alec Pierce.
Okay, those are some good ones.
Zay Jones and T. Higgins. So I love Devonta for sure. Tight end, I'm not doing as well. It was Evan Ingram, Cole Kmet, and Kyle Pitts. So don't follow me for tight end advice. The other 3 spots we might be good.
Yeah, I was those are some really solid picks there. And that some Best Ball Mania exposure you were looking at there, some puppies or something. Puppies, yeah.
Yeah, I did a couple of like the regular 12-man ones too, just to see how those would go.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm pulling these from the Resurrection tournament that they just started. That starts in week 6. So they started this week. So it's been fun. So I started drafting those actually about I think they opened it up in week 2, and I've kind of been doing about 10 drafts a week ever since then. Gaining different exposure to different players each week, because the value's been shifting so much like crazy.
Right. And that's called is that full, or is that?
And it just stopped because they were doing it starting at week 6. So they've been doing it for like last month or so.
You know what? I'm doing like 3 articles a week. My wife's pregnant. I'm working full time. I'm doing this. I forgot about that.
Hey, you know what? It's all good. I love talking about, the Best Ball Resurrection. We're getting a little Best Ball Mania, a little update with you. I love that. You know what I mean? Because we did so much, people, that's where most of the drafters were, what I mean? They didn't even fill the Re-Resurrection tournament like I'm sure they thought. So, most of our listeners are doing the Best Ball Mania and stuff like that. So that's perfect. And that's, and I swear these aren't all victory laps. One of my other big ones was Breece Hall this last couple weeks. And, so that I have him as my second guy at 32% here. Right. So that's been pretty nice. Breece Hall, I was getting him about the 5th, 6th round there for a little while a couple weeks ago, and now he's exploded, of course. And this week he was being drafted back in that RB round 3 range. So that was another fantastic one. Another great one, Tyler Lockett, 28. That's my 3rd highest exposed player, 28%. He was being drafted in the wide receiver 4 or 5 range still. A couple weeks ago. Another steal, just these guys, it's just people didn't, were slow to adjust, especially, week 1 and week 2 are so impactful in fantasy managers' eyes. They just weren't able to, they just took a while to gain back traction. So super high about that. Evan Ingram after that. I just always end up drafting Evan Ingram in that tight end 20 range. I don't know why. It's just his name pops up. I end up selecting him. I don't have good reasons why, to be honest with you. I probably should stop. Mac Jones, 28% exposure. He was, he was being drafted, because of the injury. He's been going in quarterback 3 range, like quarterback 31, 32 these last few weeks. And, I was fine picking him up there, especially if I ended up drafting Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes in the first round, like that. And that's where they were, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen were all first-round picks in the re-resurrection drafts. Just considering those small underdog lineups, and they're not too deep, half PPR. The quarterbacks, matter a lot for scoring, and I was happy to take those guys in the first round. Actually, after looking at it again, Cortland Sutton, I just feel like all he is missing is the touchdowns. I have him at 24%, and he's just been rock solid so far this year. It's just the Denver offense, I feel like, is holding him back a little bit. He does have really good rapport with Russell Wilson. If that offense gets better, I think you're going to see a lot better days from him as well.
It probably will. I mean, I think what is his? I don't remember what his first name is. It's something McNamara. He does the analytics of Dynasty, and he's been on the horn the last 2 weeks. He's saying Russell Wilson is so undervalued. Things are going to turn around. You got to get yourself some Russell Wilson. I'm going to send him a DM now. Say what have you seen Russell Wilson go for? I'm going to ask him.
I think I actually think that too. I think Russell Wilson will turn I don't know if he's going to be exactly what we expected this year, but I do think he will turn it around a little bit. Just some of these biggest values at the close of the draft that I wrote down some of the values that I thought. I just want to hear your perspective on some of these guys if you feel the same way.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with Cortland Sutton. He was in this resurrection draft. As of a couple days ago, these values did shift quite a bit, especially in these last couple days. He was the wide receiver 18, and I thought that was a big value. I think if this offense improves, I think he's a wide receiver 1. If he had just a touchdown or 2 more, that's what we're talking about. So how do you feel about Cortland Sutton? Where do you rank him about going forward?
Yeah, he's probably on the fringe wide receiver 1. I mean, I think he's better than Jerry Jeudy. I think we got to look at it Denver too, that Javonte Williams is out. So, I mean, they're not going to be able to run the ball like they were. So they're going to have to go to the air. Their defense has been pretty good. So that, may hurt us, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely bullish on Sutton. I definitely like him more than Jeudy. I think a lot of the community had those they had them pretty close to each other this year. But from what I've seen, I just think that Sutton's better.
I've been the proponent. I think if this offense was as good as people thought, they could support both of them, especially at their ADP. As wide receiver 2s. Russell Wilson's certainly done that in the past with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Right.
Cortland Sutton is 13 in the league in target share with 28%, number 3 in air yards, and he's 6th in receiving yards. He just has just that 1 touchdown to his name, though, which is holding him back a little bit.
Right.
Another name I had here, let me pull this up really quick, is Kirk Cousins. I had it. He's the quarterback 15. However, he's 9th in yards per game. And, I just feel like that's the Vikings offense just hasn't quite clicked yet this year. And I feel like that's another offense, coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree. I think this guy could, really, as the head coach, gets his feet underneath him. I think we could see this offense improve. Where do you see, Kirk Cousins? How do you feel? Where do you rank him in quarterbacks? Has he fallen out of that quarterback 1 range to you? Like, he was going as the quarterback 15.
Let me look on my weekly rankings. I actually had him at 10. So that's probably about, I'd say 10 to 12. I think Rodgers is going to start creeping up because, Dobbs and Christian Watson and these other guys they got are going to start getting more acclimated to the offense. Lazard has looked pretty good so far. So I think if they can get Lazard and Dobbs, rolling, I think I was, doing a little bit of a deep dive today, and I was like, man, would I rather have Dobbs or Lazard the rest of the season? That's kind of torn between the two of them. So Yeah, I mean, Cousins has got a great matchup against Miami this week too. So, yeah, I mean, I'm feeling good.
Okay,
I
yeah,
would
absolutely.
say 10. I mean, I don't know. I think Stafford is the one guy that I'm really concerned about this year. There's like they can't protect him. He's got the elbow issue. So, I could see Rodgers and Russ maybe getting it together and getting past Kirk, but yeah, guys like Stafford, I'm just not sure, and even same with Lawrence. I just don't know if he's got the same consistency every week. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would draft Kirk Cousins ahead of those guys as well. I completely agree with that. Yeah, and I just think I think he is a low end quarterback one, and he's going as the high a high end quarterback two here at the quarterback 15 in the resurrection draft a couple days ago, and I don't think that value changed much. So. Uh,
oh wow,
I
no,
think he will be a value for those drafters who got him that late. Another guy that
yeah,
I really like, and he's been disappointing so far this year, is Kyler Murray at the quarterback 6. 20.4 points he scored 20.4 points per game though without DeAndre Hopkins. Um, he's number one in pass attempts, and he's had some struggles. His receivers are number 41 in target separation, so his guys have not been giving him a lot of room to throw.
yeah,
And another thing that's holding him back, he's ninth in rush yards per game, and that's just not what you expected from Kyler Murray.
right,
He just hasn't been rushing. He hasn't been using that dual threat ability as much. He's trying to be a more of a pocket passer. Kind of moving around in the back with his legs, but mainly predominantly making plays with his arm. And that is just it just hasn't gelled. And usually most of his fantasy points come after they've completely abandoned their game plan and they're just playing catch up
right,
in the fourth quarter. So. It's not pretty, but I did have him as a value just because, it doesn't matter when those fantasy points come. If you have a guy throwing this much, quarterback 6 with some rushing upside, I do think Kyler Murray could, have some league winning potential. Quarterback 6, I still think is close to his floor, and I think he has a lot more upside
yeah.
than the rest of those guys in that draft that you have later in that draft. So, how do you rank?
I got
Where
him
do you see Kyler?
quarterback 5. I'm not going to put him above Mahomes,
Okay.
but I would put him ahead of Herbert right now because Herbert's been hurt. He's got the rib cartilage tear. He's hasn't had Keenan Allen, so I feel like we haven't seen, and I feel like there's a pretty big tear drop after Kyler Murray, so it's like you got those 6 guys, maybe Brady is just outside there, Herbert, Geno Smith if he keeps playing like this, but yeah, I mean, I feel like that top 6 of quarterbacks and Kyler especially, he can make so many plays with his legs. And I feel like a lot of it's Kingsbury, man. I I want to say I was looking and it was I think like it was either the first quarter or the first half so far this season, the Arizona Cardinals had the least amount of points scored. And it's like, usually the first 15 to 20 plays of a game are scripted. So, Kingsbury's supposed to be this offensive wizard. Well, why? I mean, I get it. I get it. They miss Hopkins, but I mean, Hollywood Brown's been phenomenal. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like some of the problems is Kingsbury, unfortunately. You almost wonder if it I know they just signed these guys to a big extension, but man, you almost wonder if Sean Payton's waiting in the wings that maybe he's a guy that would go and coach Kyler Murray because I feel like Kingsbury's holding him back because like you said, he's got this great ability to make plays with his legs. When he runs, he's the fastest guy in the field. I mean, I get not wanting your guy to get hurt after you locked him up to a big extension, but you gotta let him be able to make some plays because it makes it so much harder for the defense because they're like, oh man, we can't blitz because then he's gonna run and when you don't run, you take away the element of surprise. So
Yeah.
and it's nice to have that balance. But yeah, I've got him quarterback 5.
Yeah.
I got him at quarterback 3 on the week because they're playing the Seahawks. So
Yeah, and I have him quarterback 6 in my rest of season rankings right up, but I would have taken him a little earlier in this best ball resurrection draft. Um, another guy that I'm a big fan of, that, and I just he's also not quite that Breece Hall breakout, but we have seen Travis Etienne emerge in these last couple weeks. He's out snapped James Robinson 2 weeks in a row. He's handled 54% of the snaps in that time. He's had a 54% route participation. And he has 215 rushing yards with no touchdown, which leads the NFL for running backs without a touchdown. So we're getting close. We're getting very close with Travis Etienne. He was the RB26 as of a couple of days ago, and I know that was increasing quickly. And I think he probably closed out a little bit higher than that. But still, low end RB2, and I still think his upside is a little bit higher than that. I did get scared off. Luckily I didn't panic trade him because I have him in a lot of leagues, but I was really nervous there for the first couple of weeks. I was like, man, James Robinson's back, and he's already supplanted Travis Etienne. This is a disaster. But cooler heads prevail, and Travis Etienne is rounding into perform, and that's what at least in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
He was actually my pick at the 409 in the Scott Fish Bowl. So yeah, my Scott Fish Bowl team was off to a rough start because my third pick was Pitts, and then Etienne, Fields, and AJ Dillon. And the first 2 weeks I was just getting killed, and then I started playing Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett and Dameon Pierce, and now my fortunes have shifted. I'm in like the top, 82 percentile of the Scott Fish Bowl. But yeah, a lot of it's because it's Geno Smith. Etienne, I'm hoping obviously he does well for that sake. I don't think he's a true inside runner. Like if you look at him in terms of, Robinson, who's kind of more of an inside runner. And I think the problem is Robinson is a little more of a game script running back. I think the games that they win, they can get out ahead and then put him in and run downhill. That's where I feel like Robinson's most effective. And I think if you look at his rushing stats and wins versus losses, that probably reflects. Etienne is so good out of the backfield, can make plays, but I don't feel like he's kind of a true kind of bell cow running back. I must feel like he's better used as a pass catcher. So, I mean, I'm not to say I'm not optimistic for Etienne. I like the talent. I think I'm just a little concerned because like, how good is this offense going to be? Are they going to get in the top 12 this year? It's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to be, hovering around the 16 to, 19 range in fantasy points for an offense. So I don't know. I don't know if there's enough to go around for both of them.
What's interesting though is when they've struggled in the last couple of weeks is when Travis Etienne has succeeded. It's when they haven't been competing. It's when they've had to playing catch up. Is when Travis Etienne's been deployed in a lot of passing downs and stuff. So this could, if the less competitive Jaguars team might bode well a little bit better for Travis Etienne, which is an interesting thought. I had David Montgomery down, and I'm a little bit less confident about that. After I wrote this down before yesterday's game, and David Montgomery, I had RB29. He did have up until last night. He did have 70 yards in 3 straight games. He's just a big part of the he's just actually I'm sorry, that was David Njoku. No, that was not in David Montgomery stats. I mixed up my guys there. So ignore that part. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about that. It's just like I just picked a guy because just his usage, just a usage guy. In that RB3 range. Bears like him a lot. We'll see though. That's a disaster offense. And there's just not a ton of upside there. But safe pick. I still thought at the RB29, and that's still about where I would have him. Moving on though from that, the disappointing Bears offense that we've probably talked about ad nauseum enough already, unfortunately. Just another guy that I had up at the really high, just the combination really of DK Metcalf, that Seattle offense. He was still going at the wide receiver 19 a couple of days ago, Best Ball Resurrection. He was wide receiver 30, just a couple weeks ago. Just people did not believe, did not want to believe in Geno Smith, and I've been talking about him as a sell candidate, but he's obviously. Yeah. He's obviously much, much better than we thought. So, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 19 is stealing for me. He's borderline wide receiver. He's a borderline wide receiver 1 for me the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. And I think, I think, we've gotten into a bad habit in fantasy of fading receivers because of situation. Like, I think if we look at how many how many drafts did, dynasty rookie drafts where Sky Moore was going ahead of Jahan Dotson? Like, there's no way that should have happened. And I think, Sky Moore is going to, can have a good career. But what I'm getting at is Sky Moore was coming from the MAC. Christian Watson was coming from, I think, North Dakota State's considered FCS or something around there. So these guys are going to have a much longer adjustment period to the NFL versus someone like Jahan Dotson, who played at a big program and he's looked great. As far as Metcalf, it's important to, you got to focus on the player. And then I know people have been burned with DJ Moore, obviously, Elijah Moore. Everybody loves Elijah Moore. I mean, there's a couple of receivers, but I think when you look at Metcalf, what makes him different is the guy's a physical freak. I mean, we're talking about, somebody that's 6'4", like 230 pounds. I mean, there's hardly any DBs that can guard that guy. So he's such a physical freak that hard for someone like that to, be held down. Yeah, Geno's been phenomenal. And I was telling someone this earlier. I was like, we need to take back everything bad we've said about Pete Carroll. Like, the guy can flat out coach. And, we laughed at the Seahawks all offseason, like, oh, you guys don't know what you're doing. This is a disaster. Why is 71-year-old or 70-year-old Pete Carroll coming out to coach Drew Lock? And turns out, looks like he knew what he was doing. He's completing 75% of his passes. The next guy's at 69. He's averaging 8.3 yards per attempt, which is third in the NFL. So it's not like the guy's padding his stats because he's dinking and dunking. The guy's literally throwing the ball downfield and he's dropping it right in the bucket. I posted the throw that he had to lock it on Twitter this week, and that was just like he just threw it downfield, like dropped in right in between these two defenders. It was, I can't help but feel happy for the guy. I mean, you ever remember that movie, The Replacements with Keanu Reeves?
Oh yeah, I just watched that for the first time like a month or two
and
ago.
The coach, the coach.
That's the cheesiest movie ever.
I know, but I'm finding the parallels between Gene Hackman and Pete Carroll.
I love it.
Resurrecting, Geno. So yeah, we got to feel good about DK for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just thought, yeah, absolutely. And I've been drafting a ton of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, which makes me feel really good going to these best ball resurrection. But we'll jump into the Underdog DFS stuff. I know you haven't played a lot of the battle royales and stuff like that, but I know you play some DFS stuff. So you can kind of give us your perspective on that. I'll quickly explain it to you though, and our viewers. The battle royale is their DFS on Underdog is still draft based. So you are in a draft with 5 other people, 6 teams total, and you're drafting 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 1 tight end. So you have 6 players total. There's 36 players drafted. So there's only, a couple important notes is there's only 6 quarterbacks taken in these drafts. And, it's put in a larger pool. You're playing with, a bunch of other, it's not just you with your 5 other drafters. You're getting put in a larger tournament, just like the other Underdog stuff, but you're getting put in with that team. So, 6 quarterbacks are drafted. Upward, only about 10 to 12 running backs, or, maybe even less, or usually, definitely not 12 running backs because that would be the max that could be taken. So, more like probably 6 to 8 or 9 running backs are taken. Only 6 tight ends are usually taken, maybe 7 if somebody got cute and took 2 tight ends, which doesn't usually happen. So, it's very shallow lineups. So, some advice that I've been giving to people, and maybe if you hear your thoughts on this, just in some of those shallow stuff, Josh Allen and these quarterbacks are going early, and I have no problem, grabbing Josh Allen since he's such a significant part of the scoring. It's a lot of those guys, grabbing them early. Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce are a couple of the first picks off the board because they just provide such a huge advantage at tight end. So yeah, like I said, it's a super unique setup. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's just kind of the basis of it, and I love, it's just a unique platform that just hasn't gotten a lot of traction. So you definitely check it out. Yeah, it's just not talked about. Underdog's this huge platform. A ton of people play it. Just the these battle royales, DFS stuff. It's just like I said, it's not super popular yet. But yeah, just wanted to give some people advice on that. You have a couple of things I wanted to talk about really quick. First, just some of my favorite game stacks of the week. Just I want to start off with one that just wasn't the super obvious one. I'm a little bit intrigued by this Green Bay New York Jets matchup. You have some players that you like this week in that. I think that
I've actually got Dobbs as one of my DFS picks. He's at 4,800 DraftKings, FanDuel 5,500. He's actually leading the Packers in receiving targets with 29 so far this season. He looks great. He's played 90% of the team's snaps over the last 3 games. He's found the end zone twice. I think kind of one of those things like, it's not going to, no doubt they're missing Devonte Adams. I think it was easy for us to forget just how good he is. But this is a guy too. He slipped in the 4th round. When I was looking the last 2 years, he put up like 138 receptions, 2,100 yards, and like 20 touchdowns. And I know it was just at Nevada, but he's a big-bodied receiver, and he seems to really do well in the red zone. So I feel like him and Rodgers. It's tough because I had high hopes for Green Bay's defense this year, but they haven't really looked like a great unit. It's kind of tough. This feels like a good week for Aaron Jones to get going again. It feels like it was like that week 2 where he had that monster week, and Matt LaFleur was like, we need to get him more involved because they got beat by the Vikings in week 1 and he hardly played. So when they tend to get Aaron Jones involved, good things happen. With the Jets, obviously you're playing Breece Hall. I love Garrett Wilson. I don't know if nervous is the right word, but I'm hesitant to see how Garrett Wilson, Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Corey Davis has been a lot better than we give him credit for. So we'll have to see how the Jets do. But I am big on Dobbs. I like Dobbs a lot.
Yeah, I'm more of a Lazard guy. That's okay though. I've been a truther.
Dave.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. We joke about it a lot. Yeah, I've been pounding that drum, and I still actually feel great about it. I think we're going to see some big games, particularly in best ball. I think we're going to see some big games from Lazard going forward. I think this matchup could be intriguing. The Packers are really the defense has actually been really good this year, and I think they rank number 2 in pass yards per game allowed. I think the Packers are going to try to put them on this week. I think they're going to really try to come out and play well. I think you're going to see the New York Jets play them from behind, and I think that's a recipe for some success. Just trying to get a little unique. I think there could be a New York Jets wide receiver that has a big day. I would be leaning Corey Davis or Garrett Wilson in my DFS lineups, and as my final round pick, I don't think one of those guys is a bad target. Maybe Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall, I think could have a big game as well, and he's going to be part of it, even if they are playing from behind and they have to pass. Of course, and then we can just get into the chalk games. This is a little chalky because there's only 36 players taken. So you're really counting on big performances, and that's why stacking I don't believe is as important. A lot of these winners, of these underdog battle royales, they don't even have a stacking. They just pick 6 great players. You know what I mean? Just because it's a lot shallower than a DraftKings or FanDuel tournament. So so it's just a little bit different. You're kind of just going. You need big time players. I've been telling people the last couple of weeks there's not a need to get cute with it. So you're going to want some Kansas City Buffalo players, I think, in your lineup this week. Get some. If you have the first pick, just go ahead and take Josh Allen, in my opinion. Is there any way to get, obviously the big names, we know about the big names, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Josh Allen, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. Is there any other players outside those big name guys right there you see me, maybe having an outside chance of having a big performance this week?
I really I had Jacoby Myers on my list. I do have Alec Pierce. I think my only concern, and I was listening to the Fantasy Footballers podcast this afternoon, and Jason Moore was talking about this because Alec Pierce has looked really good, but they're not protecting Matt Ryan well, and the Jaguars have a good pass rush. So with Pierce, he's kind of more of a downfield threat. Is Matt Ryan going to be able to get him the ball when he's constantly under duress? So I'm slightly concerned. But Pierce, he's averaging almost 15 yards a reception. He he was concussed in week 1 early, and then he dropped a touchdown pass, and I almost feel like he shouldn't have been in the game. And then he missed week 2, so he came back the last 4 weeks. He's had 15 receptions for 222 yards. I know the Colts offense hasn't looked great. Matt Ryan has looked rough, but Michael Pittman's going to see the team's best corner, and Pierce is a guy I really liked. He's 6'3", over 200 pounds. He has 4.41 speed. He's got like close to 95th percentile in a lot of categories, and he played at Cincinnati where they ran such a heavy RPO scheme. He really wasn't able to showcase what he could do. So I think a lot of these rookie receivers are good, man. And we know, looking at how well Amon-Ra was last year, that second half of the season, a lot of these guys are going to shine. I really like Ramondre Stevenson for the next month, because Damian Harris, unfortunately, has got the hamstring injury. They got the Browns defense this week, who are not good. I mean, Austin Eckler was just obliterated them last week. So I think Cleveland defense 29th in yards allowed, 27th in points given up, and 32nd in opposing rushing yards. They're giving up the third most fantasy points to running backs this season at 26.9 per game. So Stevenson's a guy who really could shine. Another one, Jeff Wilson from the 49ers. I've been kind of fighting people on this. They're like, oh, Kyle Shanahan loves Elijah Mitchell, but we know that Kyle Shanahan loves to ride the hot hand. So Jeff Wilson keeps playing well. There's no guarantee that, somebody else is going to step in and take that job away. So I think 49ers defense has just been awesome. So I don't think they're really trying to get too cute on offense, because they know that nobody can score on them. So they're running the ball. They're playing good defense. I mean, they kind of remind me of the 49ers when they went to the Super Bowl, to be honest with you, kind of in that same mold. So he's a guy that I really like. He's, we talked a little bit about Kenneth Walker. I think tight end is where things get dicey, man, because it's like you got Kelsey, you got Andrews, and you got nobody. I mean, TJ Hawkinson, after his monster week, he had one catch for 5 yards last week. I mean, hey, you don't mind it in best ball because he gave you that monster week in week 5, which is great about best ball. But yeah, I mean, everybody, I was a huge Kyle Pitts guy, so that's been tough for me. People have been nice to me about it, though, luckily. But if you look at, George Kittle and Darren Waller for where they were drafted, and Dalton Schultz, none of those guys are doing anything either. So it's like you either went early on tight end with Andrews and Kelsey, or you went late and hopefully you got. I mean, Dallas Goedert's really been the only good mid tight end this year.
You covered a lot of good bases for these, these shorter drafts this week. Definitely Ramondre Stevenson's a great pick. These tight ends have been rough. That's why, Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews go so early in these drafts. They go right alongside, Cooper Kupp, Josh Allen, because, it's Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and no one else. In the resurrection draft, they were going first round. Travis Kelce was going at the 4th pick in the most recent ones leading up to that close on Thursday. People are tired of playing that game at tight end. You know what I mean? That's it. It's Travis Kelce, it's Mark Andrews, and then it's a gap after Travis Kelce, I think. Travis Kelce is just such a difference maker. I just don't think there's anyone like him in the league. And Mark Andrews is fairly close to it, but after that, I'm done. I'm done with tight end. I'm done. I don't even want to do it anymore. If I don't end up with Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews next year, I'm going to play the way I might treat him like a kicker. I might not even pick one up and play the waiver wire. It's ridiculous. It's every year. It's just not, we have it for fantasy football, but the NFL does not treat it like a position that, that's relevant for yards and catches and being that kind of part of the offense, unfortunately. That's I
had hoped that Kyle Pitts was going to be that guy, and I still think that he can.
I think he will.
It's just that their offensive scheme and Mariota is kind of holding him back for now. So we'll see.
Just because we're getting a little short on time, I'm just going to jump just some of my favorite values, and you can tell me what you think about the ADP. Like I said, so this is these battle royales are drafts instead of setting it with a cash lineup and a salary cap. you're just with 6 other drafters and you're just setting drafting. So Saquon
Yeah.
Barkley at a 9.4 ADP. I know these people love wide receivers, pushing back running back is, and it's the RB1. And, and I just think that's crazy. You know what I mean? Saquon Barkley has so much upside. And, I know these wide receivers are great, but, Saquon Barkley is right there. And Nick Chubb at 16.9, those two, come on now. Like, just like you think of 8 more players you'd rather have than Saquon Barkley or 15 more players you'd rather have than Nick Chubb, even regardless of position.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Saquon's definitely the running back one right now. I mean, gotta look at him like that for sure.
Yeah, and I just mean 8 guys, drafted ahead of Saquon is a little silly. Breece Hall was the 30th pick. I feel like he's not getting that respect from the last game that he had. So that's borderline not getting drafted and probably in some drafts. So I think Breece Hall is within my RB1 rankings this week, and I would definitely be grabbing some Breece Hall in these battle royales. And you said you have him as an RB1 as well, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Love that. And then, DK Metcalf at the pick 20.7 and Tyler Lockett at 27.3. Man, it's just every week people want to doubt Geno Smith, I feel like.
They do. He said everybody wrote him off, but he's not going to write back. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that's the hard thing about fantasy football, man. It's like, I feel like week 1 or week 2 is so like that's like the thing we remember and like gets stuck in our head for like the rest of the year. That like Devonta Smith put up a goose egg in week 1, and I was like beside myself. I was like, oh my God, I drafted this guy. This is my most drafted wide receiver. He didn't have any points. And everybody was giving me a hard time, and then he comes back and he's looked great. So, but yeah, somebody has a big week 1 or 2. That's what people tend to get stuck in their head. So yeah, we'll see. I think with Geno, he's running the ball a little bit more than we're giving him credit for. So he's not, he's getting almost 3 fantasy points a game from rushing. So it's kind of nice to have.
Yeah. And, he's just, it's not that DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett is quarterback proof. It's that, Geno Smith has been really good, and I've gone, I get a lot of my stats, I just want to thank, Player Profiler for a lot of these stats that I get. I certainly browse that website a little bit, and, just going down, you can't find, you can't find anywhere that Geno Smith isn't doing well. Like his efficiency is great. He's passing downfield. He's, like I said, you go down the list, it's all fantastic. You can't find an area where he's just not succeeding or, flaws to the game. He's just playing fantastic. I don't know. I've said, this, I don't think this is going to continue, just because, I don't think you can erase, 10 years. And I think, he's on a miracle run here, kind of like one of those Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jeremy Lin from the NBA kind of style, just, miracle runs. And I think it will come to an end at some point. But let's ride the wave, while it's happening. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, no matter what we thought, he's going to be the starter the rest of the year, and he's not a quarterback 3 or anything like that.
Right.
In super flex leagues, he's going to be the starter the whole year. It took me 4 weeks. No, it took me 5 weeks. I'm sorry. But this is the first week that I am benching Russell Wilson for Geno Smith. Oh my God. It took me long enough.
Yeah. I think my only to add to that, I look at Seattle almost kind of like I look at Detroit this year, in the sense of they have such a great, all these pieces on offense, but their defense is terrible. And the Detroit and Seattle are kind of like the perfect storm for fantasy this year, because they can't stop anybody, but they can score a lot of points. So they're just going to naturally find themselves in a lot of high scoring games. So.
Yeah, and their defense is terrible. Yeah, Seattle, absolutely. So they are going to have some, and that's why that game is so popular this weekend, and why I'm going to be getting some. Obviously, that's a great game to stack. It'll be chalky. It'll be a popular game to stack. But another, just to finish up here, Chris Godwin, 30.5 ADP. Getting a lot of targets, getting healthier. He didn't play a lot at the end last week, and I think that was because they were up and they kind of had the game in hand. That could happen this week, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are missing their top 3 cornerbacks probably this week, and they're just their secondary is a disaster. I mean, they just got absolutely roasted by the Buffalo Bills. Chris Godwin, I think could have a pretty good week. I don't think he'll be as popular as Mike Evans. So, that's a little bit way just to differentiate just a little bit. He'll still be popular. But you think Chris Godwin's in for a good week this week?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Steelers. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, the Steelers are a completely different defense without TJ Watt. I mean, it's a testament just to how good and how dominant that guy is. When he's out of the lineup, and they've got these other guys. I mean, Devin Bush has not looked the same since he's come back from that Achilles tear. I mean, it's been a slow burn for Pittsburgh over the last couple of years. They've just been getting worse every year, and now they don't have Roethlisberger, and everything's just kind of, taking its natural course. But I mean, it's just crazy because the Steelers really haven't been bad in like 30 years, man. They had like an occasional year where they would be 7-9 or whatever, but they've never been like this. But yeah, I love Godwin. And I look at the Bucs offense. It's going to get better as the season goes. I think they're working out some of the kinks. They had some brutal injuries on the offensive line. I mean, there was like what happened to Ryan Jensen, then Ali Marpet retired. So they've been hit hard, and guys have been hurt, and Brady was out, and they got the whole saga with Giselle. But I see them as someone who's going to turn on the afterburners in the second half of the year for sure. But I like Godwin this week. I got Godwin in my home league, which obviously the league I care the most about. So he's my wide receiver 1 this week in that league.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that Tampa Bay offense is finding its groove. I think you're going to see some big improvement from these guys as Tom Brady gets as the gels a little bit, as these wide receivers get healthy. They're finally off the injury report. Russell Gage, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all fully healthy. So that's going to be nice to see. We're going to wrap it up though, folks. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. What are you up to in these next couple weeks? Where can people find your stuff and this, some of your content? What are you working on?
It's at Rotoballer. So I'm doing 3 weekly articles. So I do a running back recap on Monday late morning, and then I do my DFS comes out on Thursday, and then I do my waiver wire stashes, which will come out tomorrow morning. I kind of update that every week. I mean, it's basically players who are rostered in, let's say 35% of Yahoo leagues or less. It's not the obvious picks. It's maybe who's somebody we should stash away who might have potential. Like I did have Geno Smith on there a couple weeks ago. Somebody like an Isaiah Pacheco who looks really fast, and if he just gets more carries, that I feel like he could be really, really good for fantasy. So I like doing that, and I'm always down to answer any questions. But super flex kind of quarterback. Which quarterback should I start? Who should I pick up? Who should I stream? That's kind of my area of expertise where I can offer what I feel like is the best feedback for people. So yeah, Luck is made FF on Twitter and writing for Rotoballer, and yeah, just enjoying the season, man.
Hey, yeah, that's awesome. I love listening to your stuff. All the fun group chats that we got going. We're in some fantasy leagues together. It's a lot of fun. It's great to have you on, man. You're more than welcome to come on anytime after this. I'm gonna head off I'm gonna hit the sack. I'm getting up bright and early to go get on a plane tomorrow to head to Kansas City for the Buffalo Kansas City game. Ooh, so
that'll be fun.
It's I'm hoping for a great game. I'm hoping I'm not making the trip for nothing. So. That's it for us, everybody. Have a great night and good luck this weekend, okay? And thank you so much for checking us out.